Welcome, everyone. We're so glad that you're here today. We're going to be talking about relationship dynamics before and after abortion. I'm joined by Niles, who will be co-presenting. And our key message today is that abortion doesn't occur in isolation. It happens within a network of relationships that are all affected. Why is this important, Niles?
We know that many relationships end after abortion. We're going to share some key reasons in the presentation with solutions to mend those relationships.
Thank you, Niles. So let's get started. First, let's acknowledge that every individual's experience is unique. The emotions and relationship dynamics before an abortion can differ significantly from those after. It's important to approach each situation with empathy and an open heart. So we'll explore how these experiences can shape relationships with partners, with family, and friends. And recognizing these dynamics allows us to offer better support and understanding to those affected. So let me tell you before we get into this who I am. My name's Susan Ainsworth, and I am with Care Pregnancy Center in Shreveport, Louisiana. I've been here since 2001. I'm the office manager here, but I'm also the abortion recovery director. I wanted to just say very quickly, you're seeing a different face just because Karen wasn't able to be here and asked me to do this. So grace for me, please. I've not done this before. I did want to point out, I love these webinars so much. If you did not see the last quarterly meeting or if you didn't attend, it was great. Karen and Niles were doing a bunch of role play. It was really, really interesting. I learned a lot. It doesn't matter how many years I've been doing this, I can learn something all the time. And Niles, it looked like y'all were just having too much fun. That's who I am. And Niles, if you just introduce yourself.
Of course, thank you, Susan, and also thank you for being able to step in today. Really appreciate having you, and I'm grateful to have you just graciously step into this role. I'm Niles. I'm the men's healing coordinator here at Support After Abortion. I'm really grateful to have all of you here today and just excited to dig into this topic. To start off, we know abortion impacts many individuals, not just the woman and her partner. With that being said, this list barely touches the surface of who could potentially be impacted by someone else's abortion. Hey, Susan, if you would expand on this list, who would you also include?
I think I would include siblings, coworkers, maybe church community, living children. Can you think of any more?
For me, I think I would say some teammates I've had experiences with, some coaches and teachers, just from my journey and my abortion experience. So just something that I can relate to, and maybe other athletes or men or anyone else can relate to that. So as we can see, this spans far and wide. And here's just a little overview of the discussion today. Abortion decisions can happen within a web of relationships with partners, family, friends, and sometimes faith communities. These relationships often influence both the decision itself and the emotional impact. The emotional aftermath may include relief, isolation, anger, numbness, and regret, or other hard, challenging feelings. The experience can affect communication, trust, and emotional closeness long after the event. Now, let's talk about common relationship dynamics before abortion. I can honestly admit myself, I hadn't fully considered how the state of a relationship beforehand might influence what someone feels and what they can handle. So I can give you the example of this. Imagine a couple who's been arguing for a few months, stress about money, communication breaking down, both feeling unheard at times. When the pregnancy happens, they're already exhausted. Instead of making the decision from a place of stability, they're making it from a place of fear, overwhelm, and disconnection. The relationship dynamic itself becomes part of the pressure. Issues may already exist in the relationship, resulting in partner disagreement or withdrawal. This could lead to lack of communication, may create distance in the relationship, may result in one or both partners shutting down. Parental or social pressure, this could lead to mistrust, distance in the parent/child relationship, and anger, emotional or financial insecurity. This could lead to fear. These dynamics can lead to confusion, isolation, or a sense of emotional disconnection between the partners, even before the decision is even made.
We're going to discuss some common relationship dynamics after abortion. So let's explore first how silence or avoidance in a relationship can have profound effects, like emotional withdrawal from those closest to us. This dynamic creates distance in the relationship. We often say that abortion is socially accepted, yet we never talk about it. I know that was my experience, that there was no one around me talking about it at the time. And now it makes me think about how silence, secrecy, and unresolved conflict can change a relationship. What do you think about that? Can you relate?
Thanks for asking that question, Susan. So, my experience actually felt like an elephant in the room. It felt like there was just that unspoken feeling of anxiousness, feeling like tension, like you just don't know how to explain it, or I don't know if anybody's ever felt like that, just like ball in their chest. And that's what it felt like when we had certain disagreements or conversation that may have been small, but because of our abortion experience, it just felt like it was so much bigger. And then it soon felt like we were slowly drifting apart. And that's just the best way I can explain it from my experience and what I've dealt with.
Okay, thanks for sharing that. To take it a step further, communication is truly the lifeline of any relationship. And when it becomes strained or when it ceases, it can feel like unsteady ground underfoot. Breakdown can lead to a loss of trust, which is vital to any strong connection. Differing perspectives can further complicate matters. And it's important to acknowledge that these differences can lead to feelings of anger, or of feeling unheard, manipulated, or dismissed. These emotions can be quite powerful and isolating. We've seen it time and time again how abortion experiences can affect the dynamics of a relationship, how we interact with each other, how we talk to each other, or even if we still talk to each other at all. So let's keep in mind that these dynamics are not uncommon, and they can be addressed with open, honest communication, and that helps to rebuild trust and connection. So, what relationships are most often affected? Partners are often the most directly affected relationship following abortion. Emotional pain can manifest in various ways, and it's important to recognize how these feelings might surface, like blame, withdrawal, or disconnection, especially when each person copes with the abortion differently. Understanding how these emotions can affect partners allows us to be more empathetic and open to communication. Remember, acknowledging these feelings is the first step toward healing and building a stronger connection. As we continue discussing the impact on partner relationships, let's look at some of the common dynamics that can emerge. One partner might feel unsupported or pressured, while the other might feel left out or helpless. This difference in emotions, ranging from relief to grief to guilt, can lead to misunderstandings and distance. Avoidance or silence might seem like a way to protect yourself, but it often leads to further disconnection. It's crucial to recognize that trust and intimacy can weaken when communication breaks down, and unresolved emotions may resurface, creating deeper conflict, mistrust, or detachment. So it's essential to address these feelings with compassion and without judgment to foster a healthier relationship moving. So what steps can we take to heal our partner relationship? Let's look at how partner relationships can improve after a challenging experience like abortion. First, it's crucial to speak honestly about what happened and about how it affected each person involved. This openness can lay the foundation for healing. Next, fostering open dialogue, practicing active listening are essential. Encourage a space where both partners feel heard and understood. Lead with empathy and compassion, not judgment. And by approaching conversations this way, we create an environment of support and understanding. In addition, start by recognizing both partners' pain and perspectives as valid. It's important to remember that each person's perspective, even if it's different, must be validated and accepted. Now let's look at the concept of rebuilding emotional and physical closeness. This can be achieved through shared vulnerability by opening up and sharing their deepest fears and hopes with each other without fear of judgment. They create a space where healing and connection can flourish. Remember, the key here is mutual vulnerability. It's a two-way street that involves both partners, and they must be open and supportive. This process might be challenging, but it's a powerful step towards healing and strengthening that relationship.
Now, let's look into family relationships and how they may be affected after abortion. Family influence, both before and after an abortion, plays a significant role in shaping how someone processes the experience. Think about those times when parents or family members influence the decision-making process. If the decision doesn't align with what the woman or man involved, it can leave lasting emotional wounds. These emotional wounds can be deep, particularly when it isn't an agreement or understanding within the family. It's critical to acknowledge how these dynamics can impact emotional well-being. Recognizing this influence helps to understand the complexities involved and the importance of supporting individuals through empathy and open dialogue. Next, we look at the impact of keeping an abortion secret within a family. When this happens, individuals may feel isolated, leading to a sense of loneliness. A major shift can occur in the parent-child relationship, moving from one of trust and openness to suspicion and caution. This change isn't limited to the parents and the child involved, but can impact the entire family. Susan, who are some of the other family members that could be impacted?
That's a good question. I know that we usually encounter siblings and grandparents, the ones that seem most affected, but I can also see how aunts, uncles, cousins, lots of other relatives could be affected.
Thank you, Susan. Now, to go off your thought, siblings and grandparents are often the first to feel the ripple effects. But like you mentioned, it can reach so much further. When communication shifts or emotions get pushed underground, aunts, uncles, cousins, even close family friends can pick up on that change. Sometimes they notice the tension, and it can be subtly reshape how the whole family interacts. Family secrets may lead to emotional distance or unresolved grief, sometimes across generations. It's important to recognize how these dynamics can affect the emotional well-being of both current and future children. When grief or loss remains unnamed at home, it can deeply shape the family's emotional landscape. Over time, maintaining secrecy can weaken the emotional connection within the family. Being aware of this can be the first step towards fostering a healthier and more supportive family environment. Some may think that we acknowledge how family relationships are affected by abortion, we're placing blame. What do you think about that, Susan?
I think that by naming them, we really open the door for communication and opportunities to understand each other better. In other words, finding common ground. And to me, that's healing.
Thank you, Susan. What steps can we take to heal our family relationships? Let's look at how your client could take a vital step towards healing their family relationships. First, encourage them to practice honest and compassionate communication, but only when they are ready. It's important for them to be gentle with themselves because we want to approach this with light judgment and self-awareness. Next, acknowledging what has happened is key. Recognizing the reality of the situation can be the first step toward healing. Remember, these are not easy conversations, but they can be transformative. Compassionate communication and acknowledging what has happened helps to rebuild trust and openness within the family. Let's move forward by exploring how vulnerability and openness can further support this process. Encourage your clients to allow room for vulnerability and openness within the family. These are crucial elements in healing. Even small steps can make a big difference. So don't underestimate their power. It's important to remember that family healing often starts with one person's courage to be vulnerable and honest. This individual act can set the stage for collective healing. Encourage reflection on how they can contribute to this process. Small actions, when practiced consistently, can lead to substantial progress. We could consider how others respond to the abortion, like friends, the church family, and social circles. Keep in mind the impact this has on your client's healing journey. Responses from partners, family, friends, faith communities, and social circles can all play a crucial role. Whether it's through judgment, silence, or compassion, each response carries weight and can either support or hinder healing. Consider how compassion can be transformative. It's important to understand that compassion fosters connection and can guide someone towards healing. So, Encourage your client to work towards creating an environment where compassion becomes a norm and everyone feels a sense of belonging and support. Let's explore how the aftermath of an abortion can influence personal relationships other than partner and family. Your clients might pull away from support networks like friends or their church community due to fears of being judged or rejected. This can be profoundly isolating. Trust issues will emerge, making it challenging to reach out for help or to reconnect with others. While some individuals find solace in new, more accepting groups, others may feel the sting of the loss of former relationships. It's important to recognize the responses from peers or faith groups can significantly impact the healing process for your client. They can either foster healing or, unfortunately, contribute to feelings of shame. By understanding these dynamics, you can help your client work towards creating nurturing environments that support healing and connection. What steps can we take to heal our friendships, faith communities, and social circles? First thing you want to ask is, what type of relationship environments support healing and connection? Those that foster empathy, confidentiality, and understanding. Susan, why do you think those environments positively influence relationships?
In those environments, there's no judgment, there's no blame, anger, or arguments. It's leading with compassion, validating others' feelings, and keeping the conversation between the parties involved, which fosters trust. All of those things bring unity to the situation.
Thank you for that answer, Susan. It's important to recognize that the loss of relationships might initially seem hurtful. However, it can actually be a part of the healing process, not the end of it. This perspective helps your client see loss as a transformative process rather than a permanent state. Being surrounded with compassion and safe support is key. Encourage your client to develop a support system that allows them to express themselves honestly without fear, enabling personal growth and healing, a community where they feel truly accepted and understood.
So let's look at the emotional impact on relationships. We're going to look at how abortion experiences can shape emotional patterns over time. And these patterns can often manifest in subtle and lasting ways. Key emotions like guilt, depression, and anger don't just exist in isolation. They profoundly affect how relationships evolve after abortion. Healing truly begins for your client when they can acknowledge these emotions openly without fear of judgment or rejection. This openness allows them to process their feelings and move forward in a positive direction. Remember that emotional responses are deeply intertwined with relationships, highlighting the importance of empathy and understanding in that healing journey. What are some of the common patterns that can form after an abortion? In this next section, we're going to discuss how these emotional patterns can impact relationships. Guilt. Guilt can make someone feel undeserving of love, of forgiveness, or happiness. Anger might be directed inward or outward, and it might appear as irritation, blame, or even withdrawal. Sadness or grief often involves a deep sense of loss, missed potential, and broken trust. Fear also plays a role. The fear of judgment, of rejection, or of just being misunderstood by others. Lastly, there's emotional numbness, where connecting with future partners or even children may become difficult. These emotional patterns are common, and recognizing them is the first step toward healing and improving relationships. So, how do these emotional patterns impact relationships? Let's take a little closer look. Unhealed emotion can affect relationships. To begin, many people might withhold emotions, thinking that they're protecting others or avoiding conflict. However, this often leads to misunderstandings, creating distance or resentment. Another important point is the difficulty in rebuilding intimacy or trust. When emotions aren't healed, it becomes challenging to form close connections. Consider the tendency for overdependence or codependency, as some say, or withdrawal as coping strategies. These behaviors can trap us in cycles, repeating emotional patterns in future relationships. Recognizing these patterns is really the first step toward healing and building healthier relationships. So, what steps can we take to heal emotionally? First, it's important for your clients to know that everyone processes emotions differently. There's no single right way to heal. Therefore, Normalizing emotional diversity and accepting how others feel is the beginning of healing emotionally. Encourage yourself and others to engage in honest self-reflection. Becoming self-aware is the first step in the change process. This can lead to more meaningful conversations with trusted friends, partners, or mentors. Continuing on with the steps that your clients can take to heal emotionally is seeking support. Sometimes we just need others to help us find our way. Finding the right kind of support can significantly aid in better understanding emotions and the relationship patterns that arise from them, as well as techniques to grow and heal. So whether it's through professional counseling or peer support, whether it's secular or faith-based, each option offers a unique pathway to healing and helps to break those cycles of silence. Creating safe space is crucial. These environments should welcome vulnerability and empathy, ensuring that people are met with compassion rather than correction. That approach fosters trust and openness and allows individuals to express themselves freely and without fear. So remember, the goal is to encourage a supportive atmosphere where healing can naturally progress. Now let's look at relational healing and how that can further support this journey.
Let's consider the idea that healing after abortion is profoundly relational. It's important to remember that empathy and patience play a significant role in rebuilding trust and emotional closeness. Forgiveness and restoration are not instantaneous but develop over time. It's important to allow this process to unfold naturally. Every emotion, even when they are conflicting, deserves to be acknowledged and validated. Reconnection is possible when we approach both ourselves and others with compassion. So how can we take ownership of mending our relationship? By developing self-awareness. As Susan said earlier, self-awareness is the first step in the change process. Recognizing emotions and triggers help to engage with others more thoughtfully. Once triggers are identified and the resulting unhealthy choices are acknowledged, we have the power to respond rather than react. The next way our clients can take ownership of mending their relationships is by inviting honest and blame-free conversations when both parties are ready. And when both parties are ready, just to make sure both are ready to communicate transparently and open. Finally, forgiveness can be transformative. It's important to practice both self-forgiveness and forgiveness of others. This step is a powerful way to move forward. As we continue, there are 3 more ways to take ownership of mending relationships. Let's explore how boundaries are essential. They help us identify which relationships are nurturing and which ones might hinder our progress. Let's consider the role of community support. Safe, non-judgmental spaces like counseling, peer groups, or trusted friendship can significantly enhance the healing process. These communities can provide your clients with the strength and understanding they need. Lastly, finding creative outlets is another powerful tool. Whether it's journaling, art, hiking, or writing, these activities allow for expression of feelings and emotions in a constructive way.
Hey, Michelle, can
Yes.
we just take a minute and tell me if there are any questions in the chat?
We have received some questions because you can also message them to us. Here's a question for y'all. As facilitators, how can we gently bring up abortion-related relationship dynamics when participants only talk about general conflict with a partner or a family member, but they don't actually mention the abortion itself?
That's a good question. I think it's something that happens fairly often. I think if it were me, I would give them a little time to just talk about the general conflict and then ask some open-ended questions just about their life and about how their relationship has changed since the abortion. And in doing that, hopefully that's going to draw them, I guess, more into the conversation about the abortion itself. I don't think I wouldn't force it though. If I ask a question or two and they seem hesitant to answer, I don't want to push it because I don't want them to feel like I have an agenda.
That's
Hey,
a good
girls.
point, Susan.
Yes, and to piggyback off of Susan, she made some great points and a few things that came to mind. Like she said, where they said the general conflict is, I like to think of that maybe of starting where they are. Like maybe that's the first step. And I know something that I was taught just in my journey of healing is it's just one step at a time and one day at a time. It's dealing with one emotion at a time and not thinking of everything in front of me. Susan said it, I've thought of it a different way, but it's like anchoring in the experience. And when she asked the question of what changed for you emotionally around that time, that's what I think of because there may be some more that's there if you just stay in that moment with them, ask them questions. My coach used to say these things of breadcrumbs when he teaching us certain things about ourselves or a film and certain things like that. So when someone's presenting to you what they're feeling and certain things like that, I like to call them look for their emotional breadcrumbs. If you hear certain words like shame, distance,
Mm.
anger, or withdrawal, let's stay there. So you could say something like, many man or woman notice that big decisions in their past shape how they show up now. Do you feel any of that there? And I feel like something like that can just get the conversation going. And like Susan said, the last thing is never force the connection.
Yeah, I definitely don't want a client feeling like I'm pushing them or that I have an agenda.
Yes. Are there any more questions?
Yes, we do. Let's see. This one is, what are some facilitator phrases we can use when a participant keeps blaming their partner for everything so we can gently invite them to explore their own feelings and choices without sounding like we're blaming?
Okay, that's tricky. But I know one of the things that I like to do with clients when they just keep that focus on just the partner and they don't really look at anything else. I do like to say that I know that it doesn't happen in a vacuum. There are lots of other influences that contribute to that abortion decision. And so asking them about sometimes we'll draw them into that conversation and they'll explore a little more what else influenced their decision besides the partner. Another thing I have them do a circle sometimes. Just draw a circle on a piece of paper and write in there all of the things that influenced their decision. And sometimes that helps them to see that it wasn't just their partner and that they may have put themselves in that circle and they can start to see what role they played without blaming them or making them feel bad.
I think to add to that, just in my time facilitating working after abortion line, when I have men reach out or women reach out and they talk about their partners, I think I try to make sure I acknowledge their perspective first. I try to get them to stay there in that moment and try to make sure I let them know this focuses on your emotion. We're not trying to blame your partner, but I'm doing it lightly. So I could think of saying something such as, it makes sense that his or her actions had a big impact on you. And that simply right there can let them know, okay, wait, so he's bringing this back to me, or she's bringing this attention back to me. Another way I can say when I was going through my personal experience myself was I had to learn to separate my feelings from my partner's. So when I think about my healing journey, I had to think of certain things to myself, like when I think back on that time, what emotions were coming up for me personally. And every time I mentioned loving journaling, I would write down the things I felt and why I felt those ways and how it impacted me. Why does it impact me so much? And it really allowed me to process and become self-aware and handle my emotions just a little bit better. And then the last thing I can say is open space for self-reflection without confrontation. And that came to my mind just because in this space, sometimes in their experience and past, you never know what someone has been through. So even the slightest going back and forth of ideas, thoughts, and opinions may feel like a big confrontation to them. So I think letting them know that this is an open space and reiterating that and letting them know we don't want any confrontation, but we could say certain things to someone. If we set his choices aside for a moment, what was happening inside you during that season or during that feeling or during that moment?
Good.
So I think just questions like that get the gears turning in their mind.
Those are good.
Any more, Michelle?
Let's see. What might be a good facilitator response when someone says, my friends were supportive at the time, but now I feel like I can't bring it up again because they've moved on or they think I should have moved on?
That's a good question.
That's something that we hear a lot, isn't it? That people have moved on and they think we should have as well. I think I would first just certainly validate how she's feeling because that feels like abandonment. And that's painful when you feel like friends that you want to talk with have moved on. But I think then I would ask her to just give me a little more information, give me some examples of what she means when she says they've moved on. What have they said? What have they done? I think I would also want to know what those relationships looked like before the abortion? Were they that before, or have they changed dramatically since? I know Karen was saying the other day that lots of times she's encouraged clients to stop talking to the partner about that pain because they're not hearing it. And what happens sometimes is that people closest to us don't know what to do with that pain. They don't know how to help us. And so they think we'll just move on and it'll go away. So in a situation like that, I think I would encourage the client to talk to someone at support after abortion, talk to a therapist, talk to a life coach, talk to the friends that she can trust that do want to hear her, but maybe not put so much energy into those relationships that are not helping her at the moment. What do you think, Niles, from a guy's? I love the guy's perspective because it's different.
Yes, and I think my biggest thing is just thinking about other men. And I know sometimes, if anybody, most likely man in your life that eats the same meal, they go to the same place every day, they wear the same lucky jersey, the same hat, certain things like that. And I know we're talking, and I know you're probably like, where is that coming from? And I say that simply because when these changes are happening, you have to invite them to expand on this change and think about how their life has been impacted since themselves. Because someone that's so used to a certain thing that they're comfortable with for so long, the certain friend, the certain person that they can talk to and buddy, and when that person starts to maybe not feel that same feeling after your abortion experience, you have to allow them to go into that headspace and ask certain questions that may dig deeper. Something that I have, just thinking a few conversations I had with my time working after abortion line, is I've said certain things like, that makes a lot of sense. Can you tell me what those friendships felt like before the abortion and how they felt since or shifted since then? And then they'll share and they'll dive deeper into that, and then they'll be like, I didn't do anything. I don't know. All I did was had something that this, I'm the one going through the pain. And then I started to think about, so why or how, I don't like to use why. I learned that from Karen, but of how is that making you feel, or how can we change that? Certain things like that. I think another thing is for men, and I know men sometimes can make other friends the easiest. All you have to do is like the same color or same Gatorade sometimes. But you have to tell other men, and some men maybe become more comfortable with it than others because different past. But normalize why friends might pull back without dismissing their pain. So when I say that, I'm saying, how can you explain to someone that someone may not want to be a part of your life because of the decision you made and certain things that are taking that very difficult? But we have to approach that still understand that this person is still hurting. We can't just give that tough love you would to a best friend and be like, oh, get over it. We have to understand this person is in a very vulnerable state and
Right.
they're needing some kind of compassion from us that they're not receiving, and that's why they're here for coming to us for support. Is because we're that compassion and that safe place that they need and deserve.
Okay. Good answer. Thanks.
Anything? These are great questions.
They are.
Yeah. Okay, here's another one for you. If a participant begins to recognize that certain friendships or family interactions are re-triggering them, how can we help them discern whether to lean in and communicate or to step back for a season?
So if they think that if they're seeing that family relationships are triggering, the first thing that's going to be the most helpful is just self-awareness. What kind of behavior does that trigger? If I'm recovering, if I'm trying to stay clean from a substance and all my best friends or my closest family members are still involved in that kind of behavior, I may have to just completely avoid that for a while. But I need to be self-aware enough. I really need to examine what's going on in me. What is that triggering? Is being around them causing me to fall, or am I able to be around them and not fall? We may have to, sometimes we do have to step back from certain relationships, maybe not forever, but for a time, just to avoid those kind of triggers. And again, I think it just depends on what kind of behavior that's triggering. If going to my friend's baby shower just makes me feel sad, it's not the same as going to my friend's baby shower causes me to engage in some real self-destructive behavior. So I think being self-aware is the key.
Everyone that knows me knows my list, like I mentioned, journaling. And this thought has got me in the thought process of invite them to weigh on emotional cost versus emotional.
Okay.
And I think that's a thought that it's sometimes you're like, what do you mean by emotional cost versus my emotional safety? When I think of emotional cost, I think of if this person makes you feel drained and taxed and exhausted and certain things like that, I feel like that's an emotional cost, and that's how I think of it. But then when I think of emotional safety, when I go into meeting up with this person or talking to this person, do I feel like this person is making me feel listened to? Does this person make me feel like I'm welcome? Do I just feel that this is the place for me? And I think that's one of the biggest things, because separating those two and being able to write those down on paper or think of it in your head, it can really open your eyes in certain ways, because now it's like I have something to weigh and go based off of. Another thing I'd like to mention is if somebody makes a decision, you want to empower them to choose what's right for them. So that kind of goes back into the emotional cost versus emotional safety, because now it's telling them, okay, I see what's right for me, but am I going to, when I take that step forward and I have this person pushing me and wanting the best for me, what's stopping me from going in the right direction and taking that space in between? Do we have time for any more questions or?
I think you probably have time for a few more, maybe.
Okay.
You want one?
Of course, we can take one more.
What would you say to a client who tells you that she has had difficulty bonding with her children?
That's one that I hear a lot. I think first I would just let her know that what she's experiencing is not uncommon. Because when a mom, I just know as a mom, and from my own personal experience, I've been here. This is a good question. I think when you become aware that I'm having trouble maybe with bonding with this child, then you feel like such a failure. You just have all these negative emotions. So I would certainly let her know first that's not uncommon. I think I would just ask her to tell me a little bit more about what that looks like for her. Give me a little more information. What kinds of feelings is she having? And what kinds of thoughts? I know for me, in my experience, the thoughts that I was having were absolutely untrue. I feared really getting connected with that child because I thought something terrible was going to happen as a punishment. And I don't know, I bet a lot of people on this call have heard that from their clients as well. And so for me personally, I needed to really look at those thoughts and whether or not there was truth to those. Acknowledge the emotions. Again, self-awareness, just understanding why I'm having those emotions, but looking at the thoughts that are causing me to feel that way and trying my best to replace those with something that's truthful. That's a tough spot. You have anything to add, Niles?
No, I think you hit everything on the head and said it beautifully.
Awesome.
Is that
All
something
right.
that you hear from men that they have trouble bonding?
I don't hear many men say trouble bonding. I've definitely heard from my few experience actually of men when they have had an abortion experience and then when they find out that they're having another baby on the way. I've had a situation, a man, he had an abortion maybe a few years ago, and then his wife told him he was pregnant, they were about to have a child, and he was sobbing on the phone on the after abortion line because he was like he felt like he didn't deserve this child. And
Mm.
he was like, I don't know how I can do this after my decision before because this child's supposed to have a sibling. And he's just expressing all these feelings of how he felt so bad. But as he kept talking about it, I realized he kept feeling bad about taking away his soon to be born child's sibling and how the other child felt. And I had to bring it back to him of asking, what is making you feel these emotions for them? What about yourself? And grieving. And I brought the conversation back to him. And he was just like, just something I never thought I could do myself and certain things he was just sharing. So I wouldn't say much as bonding, but I've definitely heard experiences like right before they're supposed to have another child.
Great. We've had one more question put in the chat. Any advice for women who want to have another child right after an abortion so they can bring back or replace the child that was aborted?
We see that a lot too. I do see that. Again, and I guess I always start there. I would validate how that client's feeling, that she's absolutely feeling loss and grief and she's missing this child. I think I would let her know that is a common response. But then maybe ask, and that's tricky again to not sound like you have an agenda, but ask some open-ended questions. So tell me more about that and tell me what she feels like that's going to look like for her. Do you have anything, Niles?
Yeah, that's what I said. That's just a very tough question and tough way to maneuver. I think you said that very well because I think, I don't know if many men have experienced that. Like I mentioned, some men feel bad about the next experience, but from my personal experience, I think one thing that when I told my story is when I had my son was born before I had my abortion experience. And he asked me one day, he was just like, "Can I have a brother or sibling?" And when he said that to me, I froze in that moment. And it brings me to that thought of, is this why some of those women that have that thought process? Because what if there's wonder if their child will ever ask them that question that day? And they're thinking of maybe, how do I answer that? Or will this be a trigger for me or certain things? I don't know. And that's just, I can't speak for women because I'm not a woman myself, but that's just something that I think could be something that they think of because that's just what I've heard from other men.
Right. I think we're about out of time.
Thank you all for coming today and joining us for this topic. We are grateful to have you, Susan. We want to say thank you for stepping in. I really appreciate you. You did a great job. Bye, everyone.
Bye.